welcome to Daily Dictation. This week we're looking at the topic of friendships and social relationships at a high intermediate level. This is an interactive activity video that helps you practice your English. To do that, you are going to listen to me read 5 sentences, and as I read these sentences, you are going to write them down, type them in a document, or write them in a piece of paper to practice your writing skills and your listening skills. As you write them down, you should make sure that you're using the correct spelling, grammar, punctuation, and capitalization. And after I read the 5 sentences and you write them down, I am going to show you the answers. When I show you the correct form of the sentences, then you can double check your grammar, punctuation, and spelling. I'm going to give you some tips and tricks on how to spell effectively in English. I'm going to explain the grammar in it and the punctuation. And after all of that, I'm going to give you a list of relatively advanced vocabulary words to help you expand on your vocabulary, which is going to be useful if you plan on doing a proficiency exam. If you plan on doing a proficiency exam like IELTS, CELPIP, TOEFL, or something like that, this will help you in 2 ways. The first is going to help you take effective notes as you listen, because you often only get to listen 1 time during that part of the exam. And secondly, it's going to give you a good idea of different grammar and structures that you can use in your written parts, and the vocabulary that you can use both in your written and speaking parts as well. So it's really going to help you if you practice this. This skill is best mastered if you practice it every day. So what I have is I have new sentences each weekday from Monday to Friday, new topics each week, and 2 English levels offered. If you find that this level is a little bit too challenging, there is an easier one as well. So the instructions for this activity, you will need a blank piece of paper and a pencil or a document that you can type in. 5 sentences will be read. Each sentence will be read 3 times and 1 more time at the end. You have to write down each sentence exactly how you hear it, and you will use your listening skills to do that. Try your best to apply the correct spelling, punctuation, and capitalization. So you're going to see on the screen, there's numbers 1 to 5. So write those down on your piece of paper or in your document, and each of these numbers represent a different sentence that I will read. I'm going to start with sentence number 1. Number 1. Although they started as mere acquaintances, their fellowship grew deeper. Although they started as mere acquaintances, their fellowship grew deeper. Although they started as mere acquaintances, their fellowship grew deeper. Although they started as mere acquaintances, their fellowship grew deeper. Number 2. Her supportive and empathetic nature made it easy for her friends to confide in her. Her supportive and empathetic nature made it easy for her friends to confide in her. Her supportive and empathetic nature made it easy for her friends to confide in her. Number 3. His trustworthiness and mentorship earned him the role of team leader. His trustworthiness and mentorship earned him the role of team leader. His trustworthiness and mentorship earned him the role of team leader. Number 4. While their solidarity was obvious during the event, it was her affectionate words that truly uplifted everyone's spirits. While their solidarity was obvious during the event, it was her affectionate words that truly uplifted everyone's spirits. While their solidarity was obvious during the event, it was her affectionate words that truly uplifted everyone's spirits. Number 5. As she navigated new challenges, the mentorship she received was invaluable. As she navigated new challenges, the mentorship she received was invaluable. As she navigated new challenges, the mentorship she received was invaluable. I'm going to read each sentence one more time, starting with sentence number 1. Although they started as mere acquaintances, their fellowship grew deeper. Number 2. Her supportive and empathetic nature made it easy for her friends to confide in her. Number 3. His trustworthiness and mentorship earned him the role of team leader. Number 4. While their solidarity was obvious during the event, it was her affectionate words that truly uplifted everyone's spirits. Number 5. As she navigated new challenges, the mentorship she received was invaluable. All right, so that is our 5 sentences. I'm sure everybody did a really great job writing them down. We're going to get ready to check the answers. If you found that this video was a little bit too fast, I recommend that you listen to it again at a slower speed. You can adjust the speed in the settings of the video. If you just need to listen to specific sentence numbers again, check the description for timestamps, and this will bring you to places in the video where each sentence was read. But we're going to check our answers here. We're going to start with number 1. Although they started as mere acquaintances, their fellowship grew deeper. So for this, we have the word although, which we know is a conjunction. And here, after acquaintances, we have their fellowship grew deeper. So we have our subject and our verb after this. So this kind of signals to us that this is probably a dependent clause, followed by an independent clause. We know it's an independent clause because it can stand by itself, no problem. If we only had that sentence, it would make perfect sense. And so after our dependent clause, whenever we start with a dependent clause that has a conjunction, we're going to put a comma. So that's why we have a comma in the middle there. The tricky word in the sentence is acquaintances. We've talked about it before. I usually like to split it up like AC. You can either do acquaint and sense like that, or you can do acquaintances. It depends on how you want to split up. What's easier for your brain to remember, do it that way. But the big reason that I split this up and this up is because people either forget the C or the QU, or they put the C and forget the QU, and that depends on whether they've seen this word before. If they've seen the word before, then they typically forget the C and just add the QU. But if they haven't seen the word before and you're just sounding it out, you'll put the C, but not the QU. So split it up like this so you can remember the order of the letters. Number 2. Her supportive and empathetic nature made it easy for her friends to confide in her. So for this one, we don't need any commas at all. We have the word supportive. What you want to do for this one is remember the double consonant. Empathetic is a different word form of empathy. Pathetic is an adjective, and empathy is a noun. Nature made it easy for her friends to confide in her. Now, if you sound out this word, hopefully you'll get it right or close. But you might not know what it means. And when you confide in someone, it means that you're comfortable talking about your secrets or comfortable talking about private information and telling people how you truly feel about something. And you won't confide in anyone. You'll only confide to people who you truly trust. So that's what this word means here. Besides that, we have her supportive. So we have possessive adjective here to show supportive. Nature is the noun, and empathetic nature. And these are both adjectives to describe the kind of nature that she has. And this is our verb. Made it easy, and then for her friends to confide in her. We have this is a infinitive, and when you confide in someone, these two words confide in almost always come together. This is a collocation in English when two words come together very often. Number 3, his trustworthiness and mentorship earned him the role of team leader. So again, we don't need any commas or anything like that. Very similar to number 2, we have our possessive adjective, and then instead of having adjective plus adjective plus noun, adjective plus adjective, and then noun, like up here, we actually just have noun plus noun, verb. Earned him, possessive noun, the role of team leader. So we could say the role, that's fine. But when we say of team leader, it provides us more information. And this preposition of shows the connection between role and team leader, kind of explaining the word role a little bit more. And that's why we use prepositions. Prepositions are often used to show there's a relationship between two nouns. Number 4, while their solidarity was obvious during the event, it was her affectionate words that truly uplifted everyone's spirits. Okay, so we are starting with a dependent clause. How do we know that? We're starting with a conjunction. While their solidarity was obvious during the event, that by itself doesn't make sense, because when we have this word while, it kind of signals to us that there should be more information, and there is. And that is our independent clause that follows. So this one is dependent. Doesn't make sense by itself, starts with a conjunction. Now in our second part, it was her affectionate words. So we have our subject, we have our verb, affectionate words. Then we have a noun that follows. So that because we have that SV structure that starts in the middle of the sentence, then we know that before that subject comes, we should probably put the comma. And we have seen that up here in the same way and in previous sentences as well. So we know that that's where we should put our comma, because we're starting with a subject verb, maybe an object or adjective or noun or something like that. Okay, so other than that, we know that this is an independent clause to follow. Dependent, that's why we have our comma here. Now moving on to the spelling of everything. In our first clause here, solidarity might be a tricky word. If you sound it out slowly, you should usually get something that is, if it not exactly like this, very similar to this. If you still want to split it up into bits to make it easier to remember, solidarity is a perfect way to split it up, because you know solid is a word by itself, so it's easy to remember. Another thing that we looked at before is the word obvious. You should split this one up only because when we say the word obvious in English, you don't hear the B. And so in that way, many people forget the B when they're spelling. You may have forgotten the B when you were spelling. So if you split it up into smaller bits, obvious, then you can remind yourself that there is a B, even though when we say it quickly, we can't hear it. Affectionate in the second clause over here. The big error with this one is people always get it mixed up with E, but that's incorrect because you're connecting it to the word affect, which is a noun. And then not to forget this punctuation here, there's an apostrophe to show that the spirits belong to everyone. Let's look at number 5. As she navigated new challenges, the mentorship she received was invaluable. So starting with a conjunction. And so we do have a comma here. How do we know it goes here? Well, first of all, we know that this part here doesn't make sense by itself. We need more information. The second thing, the mentorship received invaluable adjective. Because we're starting with the SV structure right in the middle of the sentence before this S starts, the subject is mentioned, we should probably put a comma to split it up. And this part actually makes sense perfectly by itself. The mentorship she received was invaluable. That makes perfect sense if it was a sentence on its own. So we know that that can be independent because we have a dependent clause first and the independent clause comes second. That's why we need a comma to separate them. If it was the other way around, we would not need a comma anymore. Hopefully a lot of the words in this last sentence weren't too bad for spelling. One of the tricky ones might have been received. In English, we have a saying. and it's I before E except after C. And so oftentimes a lot of words will have I, E, D, for example, if you're going to put cried. I before E, and if it comes directly after C, we actually move it like this. So the E will become first and the I second. So usually in letter order when we're spelling, it usually is I and then E in a lot of words, but there are some exceptions. And one of the big ones is when there's a C, we have EI after that. So the order changes here. So remind yourself I before E except after C. We have C, so it will not be I before E. It will actually be E before I. This one's hard because there are a lot of vowels that you need to remember. And other than that, hopefully it's clear. So that's a little bit of a breakdown of some spelling tips and tricks and some of the grammatical breakdowns of the structures of the sentences that we see here. We also do have some pretty good words for you to study that are all bold here. I'm going to give you a better list of those words. So the words that we have that you should study are empathy, trustworthy, affectionate, supportive, solidarity, acquaintance, fellowship, and mentorship. Make sure you know what they mean and how to use them in sentences. Know their different forms. Know the grammar associated with different forms, because if you're able to use this in a writing portion of a proficiency exam or in a speaking portion of a proficiency exam, it shows that you have a very good understanding of vocabulary, and that as you have this understanding of vocabulary, if you show it, it's going to be very good for your score, especially if you use it correctly. Now, if you don't use it correctly, of course, it's not going to look too good. So make sure you study these words and know it. This topic of friendships and social relationships does come up pretty often, so it is good to know these words. So study those, and overall, keep on studying your English, keep on doing the best that you can. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next week. Bye.